Recording is on.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Sons and Daughters of Liberty. Hope everyone's enjoying their day today. Give me a second to check my audio, make sure it's working. Yep, sounds like it's coming in good. I have a few things I want to talk about tonight. Main focus is going to definitely be on the Palestine, Ohio stuff. As an Ohio resident, I'm quite thankful I'm all the way in the northwestern corner of Ohio at this present point of time, which, with me, that's even going to change in the next few weeks. I'll be moving again, getting out of Ohio. But my little travels is actually going to take me through a lot of that stuff that's the fallout from what's happened to Palestine and Ohio, because it's the most direct and easiest route to where I'm going. So, no, I'm not going to be stopping by the area. It's about a 10-hour drive that I'm going to be doing on this move. So, I'm just going to. I might do a live stream when for the travel. I don't know yet. It depends. But I will be in that area. But I am very familiar with that area. There's a lot of stuff people aren't talking about right now. I'm also going to talk a little bit about, the distractions of the weather balloons and spy balloons or whatever they want to call it. You know, some research I've done, some things I found out. Well, you might as well get used to the terminology that, our government officials and Pentagon reporters are using, because it's clearly written in the NDA 8 for 2023. The language that they're to use when dealing with this shit's scripted. I mean, it's so scripted, it isn't funny. But I do want to focus a lot of attention on what's happening in Palestine, Ohio, because, like I said, it is in Ohio, and I live in Ohio, and it has a huge impact. First off, let me paint you this picture. What's around Palestine, Ohio? It is a rural area, small town, surrounded by farmland, surrounded by livestock, surrounded by Amish. When you start getting in the counties of Ashtabula, Southington, it's not that far from Akron and surrounding areas. I mean, we're starting to see the impacts people are talking about. Well, the waters, it's made it all the way into the Ohio River already, which I think that was kind of fast. But the weather this year, I mean, I think there's some positives. Be thankful we didn't have a bunch of snow. With these warm temperatures we have, we'd be dealing with a lot of snow melt, which would have allowed it to, get farther into places where it hasn't reached yet. But with that said, we've gotten a lot of rain, more rain than anything. And, we've been on a flood warning since last week here in Northwest Ohio. But, anything that follows this path, because literally, I live right off the turnpike, the Ohio Turnpike. Well, if you know anything about the turnpike goes from Indiana, which is I'm not but a hop, skip, jump, 10-minute drive from, all the way to Pennsylvania. So it's actually, if I jump on the turnpike, which the way I'm going to be going when I make my move, get off of Cleveland and head towards West Virginia. Yeah, it's messed up. The, how I got to crisscross the state to go south. But you can go right to this area. These areas I've been talking about, Southington, Ashtabula, because they're all just right outside of Cleveland and Akron. 45-minute drive from Cleveland. So perspective, but the main perspective, we're talking about huge agricultural areas. A lot of our agriculture and food. I mean, I live in a huge agricultural area, and our farmlands have been screwed for the last couple of years. Well, since COVID. COVID hit it hard, but then we ended up with just crazy weather. I mean, torrential rains. I mean, last year I've seen farmers not getting into their fields until late May. Many farmers just that all I've seen them ever grow was corn. Just didn't plant their fields or toss soybeans in just to get a harvest, or wheat, stuff that they never usually do. Yeah, we had the impacts of Ukraine, not being able to get fertilizer, which we're gonna see the effects of this year in full force. We're not us Ohioans. We're used to like natural disasters like that. Some are just natural. When we deal with the algae blooms, the red algae in Lake Erie, it happens almost every year. We have a very hot, warm summer. We end up having a huge problem with the red algae. But that's natural. We're talking about chemical. We're talking about negligence from all the stuff that they've gathered. And I look for them, they're going to put the blame on the train conductor, the train engineering conductors, for not heeding the warning and stopping the train or going too fast. It's the typical BS that they do. When the warning system that was in place, the cameras seen it, recorded it, that they had a brake fire, and there's speculation of, well, did the conductor get the notification, the warning, so he'd stop, which could have prevented this? Who knows? Because our infrastructure is so shot, it's not funny. I see a lot of people, that it's become, there's two different sides of the story here. People are, oh, nobody's getting it, nobody's sharing this, nobody really knows. But then we see this week all the announcements of shit that happens every day around here and throughout our country, train derailments, chemical spill from a truck accident, which happens frequently. I mean, just last year it happened around here, which ended up getting into the St. Joe's River. Now there's constantly chemical spills and chemical accidents on the turnpike. But now people are focusing on it, but they're just focusing on, oh, they're missing the big picture. They're missing the point. They're getting caught up on just like the stupid weather balloons and spy balloons, whatever you want to call it. It becomes a paranoia where there's an important story there, but they get caught up on the distraction of it. Just like, as you research the balloon thing, you come to find out that, well, they've known about it. The Pentagon's changed their story 3 different times. Oh, this happened during Trump administration, but we didn't tell them about it. Well, now they're like, oh, we notified them, but they didn't do nothing. We decided not to do anything. Okay, which is it? You told them, or you didn't tell them as your first statement because you guys were afraid of what he would do. Then we find out that the terminology UFO or UF, and there's a couple different other terminologies, is clearly put in the NDA bill for 2023. Like they planned on this to happen. This is the terminology and language they're going to use. I'm tired of it. It's a distraction. And it was. I mean, it's a big distraction. Now they're saying that those balloons weren't even China's balloons. The first one was, but the last three they shot down weren't. I mean, it's like I don't really care, nor do I believe anything you're telling me at this point. What I do believe is what happened in my state of Ohio. And what I found shocking just the other day, I was out, I had to do some shopping, get some things, you know, waiting in line, talking to a few people. They didn't even know this happened here in Ohio. Now, I know it was covered a little bit on Tweedle 11's news, but they only talked about it for a little bit, and that's it. Haven't heard nothing about it since. So a lot of people in Ohio, you know, didn't even know this happened in Ohio. And you gotta think about Ohio for a minute. Ohio is pretty much rural farm country. We only have what, maybe four big cities: Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland. Those are your three big cities. Then we have small cities like Toledo, which has slowly been declining and dying. Dayton. But after you get out of that, you're starting to get into, small towns, basically small towns. Some like Bryan, the city of Bryan. It's not a city. It's a town, barely a town. It might at one point had enough population enough to be a city, but it's not. Within 5 minutes, you're out of Bryan city limits. If that, it's not what you consider a city. And everything that surrounds it is farmland. But I'm also 20 minutes, not even 20, in 20 minutes, if I would drive around for 20 minutes, I would encounter at least 10 different railroads. We are in the railroad hub. Indiana, Ohio have huge railroad infrastructures throughout the state. And I'll be the first to tell you, our railroads are in need of serious maintenance. I mean, last year they did a little bit of maintenance on the one next to my house, but hey, Bree.
Hey, Drew, how you doing?
All
I
right.
see you're live. I was worried about you out there.
I'm all the way on the western side of it, but I will be driving through kind of in that general area in a few weeks.
Yeah, I didn't get no notification that you were live.
Doesn't surprise me. I've been on the naughty list on almost every platform for a couple months now.
Right, right. Greetings, everybody. Um,
I mean, well, you could attest to this. You're pretty much well out in the rural farm area.
um, yeah, we've actually had well, I live in a community where we have a very large um, and sorry, I apologize for my voice. My voice is like shot. Um, I have 3M in my community, and I've lost count of how many hydrochloric acid issues we've had because they actually deliver it here.
Hmm.
And man, you want to talk about some nasty stuff. Um, we had in the last 10 years, we've had no less than a dozen cars go in the river. And it's that stuff is bad.
Oh yeah,
And just think, vinyl acid, vinyl chloride, when it does hit, when water hits it, it does become hydrochloric acid.
right. Oh yeah. I
So,
mean, it's a nasty chemical because it can go through three or four different chemical compound changes just by what it interacts with, which changes it.
and I had because of what I used to do. I had somebody reach out to me and ask me, um, why didn't they use that halon foam that they used to put out electrical fires? Because that would have been an uh, jet fuel fires, and that would have been a, a a novel idea if you were in an area that absolutely had this. However, this particular area did not. Um,
They would have been able to get access through the military, the huge military base that's outside of Southington.
yeah, but that's the amount that they need.
Oh,
It
trust me,
is
this base would have it. This base
that
is huge. It's probably the
well.
hugest base that's technically, I don't know. It's operational, but not operational. You know,
I,
one of
I, I,
those.
I I know what you're talking about. Um,
What is it? I can't remember
there's
the name of it.
I haven't looked up officially looked up the full chemical list.
Oh, there was like six other different chemicals that were involved.
There
That's six or seven. It's
there's actually over 20 that were on this particular train, and why it did not have a hazmat uh, labeling. That's just one of, and I've gotten into this. I won't call them debates or arguments, but I've gotten into um, heated um, conversation about this. And I think maybe the biggest one, and maybe um, you've talked about this, why that hot box did not sensor did not go off. Well, I
well, the
can
first reports was it did go off,
um
but it didn't relay. At first the report says it went off, but it didn't relay the warning to the conductor.
well
Which I mean, it's
there's
possible.
I can clear up some of that. Um,
Just
the
how
train
because of this how fucking degraded our fucking railway systems are right now.
well there was the train
I
that
mean,
went
we're using fucking train cars and shit still from the 50s, 60s.
and on the Norfolk, and it's one of the smallest, just for comparison, people, it's one of the smallest um, private companies out there. It is the smallest and one of the remaining old companies out there. The BNSF is a combination of the Burlington Northern and Santa Fe. Now, Santa Fe was around at the time that Norfolk Southern began. They were around. Burlington Northern was around. And then you also had Sioux Line, which was bought out by Canadian Pacific.
Yep.
But the Norfolk line is one of the oldest. I think they're one of the few remaining of outside of uh, what used to be the Santa Fe line. I think they're the oldest one out there, and I don't think they survived this. Quite honestly,
Well, they're
um,
going to survive it because when you start following some of their investors and money and stuff, well, you got BlackRock tied into it.
well, you've got BlackRock, but a lot of those cars were not owned by Norfolk Southern. A lot of those cars were actually owned by foreign government. That's proven.
Well, see, like I said, the big issue here, and it's becoming the big issue because one, I live in Ohio, and I'm fucking shocked. I mean, I talked to probably about 30 different people fucking when I was in town fucking over the weekend about this, and they knew nothing of it. And we're
And
talking farmers, guys, because I live in farm country, rural areas, farm. It's all around here, farmless. Yeah, we got a Menards, fucking not even fucking. That's a 5 minute walk from my house, out in the country. But we're surrounded by railways, failing infrastructure. I mean, our
Well,
roads
you
all need redone. I mean, they've gotten to the point now where our major main roads, and this has been caught, they caught hell for this. Instead of fucking repaving them, they just throw stone on them, stone and gravel, and tar
well
them down.
what I thought was very telling is the train that went through just before this ill-fated train, who had been throwing brake shoes for the previous 30 miles left and right, and there is pictures going through the previous yard of train axles actually shifting, which would explain the fire, where the train axles are actually shifting um, left and right. That would absolutely explain a fire. But the train that went through before had actually thrown a major brake shoe off of the engine. That it is a very significant problem when you're throwing a brake shoe off of an actual engine, not a car, but an actual engine. That to me says there is significant problems that maybe the NTSB needs to really look hard at the entire safety. Uh,
They're not
a-
going
a-
to. It's not a
no,
priority. The only priority here, and this is what pisses me off even about this whole scenario, where's all these fucking green environmental energy people?
yeah, Tim was talking about that.
Oh, fuck Tim.
Um, it's not just him. Um,
No, Tim was yesterday just making fun of all this shit.
there was a few points of
Mister, all I
seriousness.
care about is fucking his money. That's what he's turning into.
He made some very serious talks about this so early on. I caught some of it, and then I had to um, hit the rack because I wasn't feeling well last night.
Now, when they start joking around about it, fucking, I just
Yeah,
turned
that's
it
when
off
I
and I'm
shut him
done with
off.
it.
Yeah, that's when I shut it off too. But
I mean, because
um,
this ain't, which is he's gonna find out because this,
oh,
the
it's
plumage
absolutely
and
going to
shit.
hit him. It's absolutely going to hit them.
And
Um,
we're not even talking about the fucking smoke. I'm talking about
the
just
water
the
issues.
water issues is huge. But everybody's
Oh,
talking about the Ohio River. You know what? I don't give a fuck about the Ohio River right now because you guys don't even want to go there because if you understood all the tributaries that go into the
oh,
Ohio River. I know I made this comment to my friend yesterday. You know, I'm glad I live in Northwest Ohio, but there is a problem. The St. Joe River flows backwards,
yep.
which means once it reaches that tributary of the St. Joe's River, it can now start going up the St. Joe's River instead of down because it actually goes south to north instead of north to south like every other river. And it could actually come back up and affect all the farmlands and our water tables here in the northern part of Ohio.
Well,
And people don't realize. I mean, I got shitty internet, so I can't really share screens. But I could actually bring up the topographical map of all the farmland, hunting areas, and water tributaries that are surrounding that area. Oh my God, that area is prime fishing area. They've got so many national park lakes, preserved lakes, but there's a river by all of them. They're all they all end up getting water from all this area, and we haven't even got to talking about what's going to happen when it rains and that shit comes that's in the sky, all the clouds and stuff starts coming down as acidic rain and other various stuff, and it contaminates
and
all of our fucking ground level water and lakes. This is huge.
and then what happens if
I mean, I grew
the
up in the 80s and 90s around here. I see when we used to have, you know, acid rain. It was a big problem around this area in the late
and
mid 80s, early 90s.
let's not
It
forget
destroys crops.
and we would be remiss. Um, the New Modern is right there. It's right there. So you want to talk about the Mississippi River? This flow absolutely it is a a very serious um, disaster that, for all intents and purposes, anything south of the Ohio Delta that pours into the Mississippi, um, anything south of that, it's um, affectionately a, a, not to sound all doomish, but
No, I take it right. I take it one step further. I'll just take it to a biblical proportion. Two thirds
it's
of
a
the
lights out.
waters, two thirds of the water turned bitter,
Yep,
like
yep,
wormwood.
yeah. It's an EOL.
Why?
Uh,
Because all of our tributaries that connect to the Ohio River, all through Tennessee, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, these tributaries flow through all those areas. We're talking about rich environmental areas.
yep.
We're talking about screw your chickens. We're talking about livestock. We're talking about game. We're talking about the shit that hunters hunt for to put food on their tables for the winter months.
Yeah, and we haven't even got um to the Gulf of Mexico yet. Um, that are still reeling from the the huge oil um screw up from a decade ago. They're just now finally starting to recover from deep water.
I mean, fuck,
Uh,
they're not even talking about the Keystone Pipeline oil leak that's happened.
no, that's fallen off the the
You know, we already
roadmap completely.
we already had an issue. Now I said screw chickens, but we already got an issue going on with the chickens. We got shortages
You
because
know,
of Tractor Supply's feed. Or
you know,
then we had the two huge chicken plant flyers. I mean, just down. I mean, I'm surrounded by 1, 2, 3, 4 chicken farms, 5 now, just within a 10-mile radius of me.
and we had 8 within I want to say 160-mile radius in a 60-day time span.
You know, I hate to say this, but we start looking at all these fucking grain fires, production or produce factories and packaging
Oh,
fires
you
that
didn't
we've had
hear you didn't hear about
in the last couple years.
uh the uh the receiving uh and shipping depot for Purina got hit by some kind of a bug that they out in Iowa. They got that place locked down tighter than Fort Knox.
Well, yeah. I mean, we got all
Nobody
this
in or
shit
out.
happening, but we're not getting to the root cause of it. Nor are we, people don't, I don't know, they get caught up. Oh, what about the balloon over Michigan? Which turned out to be a nothing burger balloon. Supposedly, we'll never know. But, I mean, we got to start thinking about it on a grander scale. We're already dealing with it. I'm going to solely blame the Biden administration. In fact, I'm going to go back and I'm going to blame the Trump administration over this as well. Nobody wants to fix our infrastructure. They talk about it. That's their biggest fucking campaign speech. We're going to fix our infrastructure. You're not fixing our infrastructures. We have a huge infrastructural problem. We don't need all these new electric cars. Our electric grid won't even support them. Obviously, proven in California. We need you to stop charging your cars because you're causing rolling blackouts. We don't need more electric cars. That's not the answer to our problem. The problem is we need to fix our infrastructure. We need to fix our electrical grid. We got some idiots that think it's cool to go be shooting at power station substations,
You know,
causing
I heard
blackouts.
I want to
Not
expound on.
cool.
I heard an interesting um, stat from the DOE. Um, the day of this event, that if they turn all of the military, just the military expenditures alone, just that, and that includes NASA, which does fall under um, the Department of Defense.
Oh yeah, because of the Space Force program,
Right. If they took
which I thought
all,
was interesting. All the NASA planes that have been flying around because of the so-called balloons as well. Yeah, they're part of the military now. That's how you save the space program.
and I thought it was very interesting that they said that if they diverted all funds from the military uh, funding and put it all into the nation's, or and they use the name or term archaic infrastructure to bring it up to date, it would take them a decade of military. The That includes the black and the red budget. Um, that it would take them a decade of those two budgets in order to even put a dent into um, just the electrical and the transportation grid. Not and that they didn't even want to factor in uh, the maybe the most critical piece of infrastructure, which would be the rail, because you can move so much more goods by rail than you can by road. And, and I thought that was very interesting that they baselined it at a decade to even put a dent into it, and that then you still have to come up with the manpower, and they wouldn't even put a timeline on that. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me?
Well, I mean,
Um,
well, look at the wasted money they put on the fucking super trains, the bullet trains out of fucking California that's running through a desert.
you know,
How much
it's
funding went to that to where you have a nothing burger out there? You might have some tracks laid, but you know, it makes no sense. We're talking about, I want you guys to understand this. Our railroad system, most of all the engines and cars that are on our railroad system are from the 50s and 60s.
our engines. Now I live on the BNSF, and I'm pretty fortunate that I have a pretty good working relationship with my local road crews and whatnot. Our engines are diesel electric, and our engines are 1989 to 1995 is the newest engine that they currently have that runs pretty consistent. They do have a few that run through that are um, as new as 2001. But as far as the Amtrak that runs up in my area, which I still have to go an hour or more, that age of those cars are 2000 to 2007. That's crazy.
Well, yeah, see, we got different classes of engines, though. Those engines are fairly new compared to your freight haulers because they're labeled, they get more funding out of transportation because they still have, and your newest engines aren't going to be like the Amtraks that run through here. Those aren't your newer engines. Those are
No,
your older ones. Your newer ones are set in like New York that commute from New York to DC,
Yeah, and those are
That's where
brand new
all
usually.
those where all your newer units are. But their cars are still 80s, 70 models.
Yep.
Nothing's changed. They don't focus on the railway. They don't want to. It's the easiest, probably the easiest infrastructure to go green on. They talked about it since the 90s, since I grew up, but they don't want to.
You know,
You go to foreign countries, third world countries, or Japan, China, their rail systems, even Russia has a better rail system than we do.
it's interesting that I got an opportunity to
And
take a
I
ride
mean,
on uh
technically, our rail systems, especially here in Ohio, this is the other thing that makes no fucking sense about this, is heavily regulated and conductors are heavily fined on a regular basis in Ohio because there are posted speed limits. And
um
if you're hauling chemicals, you have to have the labels, and it can only be done at night. They have certain hours where they can haul chemicals
all right,
on
so
open railways here in
so
Ohio.
I want to ask a
And if
dumb
you're going through
question.
a town with chemicals, hazardous chemicals, you're only allowed to go 20 mile per hour. And that
All right,
train was going faster than 20 mile per hour over those hot boxes, which
I,
they
I,
were in town to get caught on those hot boxes.
I'm going to ask a dumb question because I've been throwing this question a couple of times. Um, and I've yet to find categorical proof, but these vinyl uh, chloride tankers, and I've seen this now several times, and this has been brought up a couple of times that those cars were improperly carded. They did not have the proper carding.
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I've watched fucking. I mean, like I said, I'm surrounded by railroad tracks, and there's no avoiding them unless you're on the main roads, and you're still not avoiding them. I mean, if I could even jump on 15, either I jump on one side of the track or the other side of the track. And there's many
If
times where, well, just last year I got delayed for almost 2 hours because of a train half derailment.
do you have the ability to I want to say that chemical um should have a 1700 series um placarding. I think should be like a 1706 or a 1733.
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. Most of the rail cars you see go by, the ones that are hauling chemicals, don't even have their placards on them.
That's a big no-no.
I mean, you can say. I mean, like I said, I get to spend a lot of time watching trains go by because at any given point in time, I'm going to be somewhere where I got to cross the railroad tracks.
But
Except for Brian, because Brian actually has viaducts, and you can avoid them. But it depends which way you come into town. If you don't come into the main way and you come into the off ways, you're going to have to cross the railroad track and wait.
well,
Or Archibald's bad.
reason
Archibald's
why
real bad
I
for it because they
reason
have
why
no viaducts, and it splits their town in half.
reason why I asked that question is I've had several people ask me this, and I'm like, I'm not real sure because the images that I've seen that the train was moving too fast to get a good beat on it to see if they were properly carded. Um, I know out here, um, even the law enforcement watches that. Um, we are heavily regulated out here to where on the outside of town, the fastest they can go is up to 70 miles an hour. In town, they can go no faster than 55 until they hit a certain part of the track where they must slow down to, I think it's 35 or 40 miles an hour. And if it is a full chemical, full tanker, then they can go no faster than 35, period, through town.
It's 20 here for if they got chemicals on board, they can't go any faster than 20. It's 35 for towns. Even if they do have viaducts, they're still not allowed to go faster than 20 or 30, 35 mile per hour through a town, no matter the size of the town.
But
But
it's
they don't. But then you get like was talking about Archibald. Archibald's a prime example. It splits their fucking town in half. Almost all the factories are on. Let me see here. If I'm going north side of town, and the the town itself, the business area where all the stores and shops are, that are irrelevant because all your grocery stores and stuff on the north side compared to the south side. But you're constantly double tracked. It's double tracked all the way to Bryan, and I think all the way to that rail line goes into Fort Wayne, Indiana. If I remember right. No, the one in Montpelier goes to Fort Wayne. Well, they all connect somewhere. Junction somewhere where they go to Fort Wayne, or I mean, it's just huge. The real complex system. It's hard to keep track of where everything actually goes. But you constantly got people bitching in town, and it's like every fucking community board meeting they have. It's the bitch. They bitch about why don't we have a viaduct? We're constantly. I mean, there's constant train traffic going on that particular railway, to where there was days where you got one going one way and one going the other way, and you get held up constantly in Archibald. So they get bitched at. But then what happened is the town or the city bitches at laxes their laws. Well, we need you to go faster through our town because you're tying up. And this does happen. This is actually documented over in Archibald because the amount of train traffic, and they're not a big city, they're not a big town, so they don't have the budget to build a viaduct. Even though a viaduct system would solve their problems, but it's cheaper and easier just to ignore the speed limits for the trains. Tell them you need to go faster when in here, which causes problems, causes train accidents. I mean, we still got we still have car and semi accidents with trains because of railroads that don't have gates that come down. That was a big issue just a couple of years ago. We brought up, why doesn't these tracks have the gates?
We ended up.
Well, here's the other issue. This is all transportation. We live in a day and age where if you have a hazardous placard and you're hauling hazardous materials, no matter what it is, you have to legally stop at every railroad.
Oh man,
But they don't. They just blow right through them because it's not enforced anymore.
I took a load, a full semi load of small arms ammunition from a manufacturer going to 2 different military bases. And this was a tagged a hot freight, meaning no wait stations were to be stopped at. It's nonstop. But man, I had to go through, I think there was 21 or 22 railroad crossings. Every freaking one.
Yep.
And I was told, do not stop for anything other than fuel and the railroad crossings. My God. I bet I got lit up at least a dozen times until cop pulled up, and I hold a red envelope up to the window that had the uh, Department of Defense logo on it, and then they're like, "Uh-oh," and apparently they didn't get the memo that I was coming through on hot freight, and it's like, my God, it's and I was thinking, what would have happened if the engine would have stalled out crossing them tracks at any given moment?
Which has happened.
Oh yeah, it absolutely has. Um, and I pulled into a relatively large base that it is very, very operational, but um, you drive by, you can't really see if there's anything there. And yeah, it's one of those bases that's there, but it's not there kind of thing. And pulled up to the gate, and I had a cop pull up behind me. And he's like, "Do you know how fast you're going?" I'm like, the wheels were turning, and the diesel was burning. He's like, "Yeah, something like that." I said, "Take a look at this red envelope. It means I'm exempt." I says, "Call the Department of Defense. Sort it out with them." And he's like, "Where was your escorts?" I says, "I left them at the manufacturer because they don't know how to drive apparently." But he's like, "What the hell are you hauling?" I said, "Ammunition." I says, "It's military special grade ammunition." And he's like, "Oh, okay, have a nice day." He's like, "Are you, what exactly was your placard number?" I says, "Look it up." I says, "I know what it's supposed to be." And he's like, "Oh, you're one of those." I says, "Yeah, something like that." But it's to have, even if you have one digit off on your placard, it's a $55,000 fine and up to 25 years in prison if you're one digit off on your placard. And that's just for a truck driver.
Yeah, but the point is, they don't enforce that shit anymore.
Oh, they do for truckers. Oh my God, they do.
Well, yeah, because they get fucking truckers get fucking they get fined per wheel. So I mean, yeah.
It's stupid, but you brought up a very valid point um, about the Euro trains. Those things are sweet.
But yeah, it goes to my point. It's all you hear all this push for all this environmental green energy fucking type shit. But look at the. Actually, no, you brung up a good point. You keep getting me sidetracked, and I missed it. I want to go back to Palestine, Ohio. You brought up a point. Why didn't they use? And this is something me and you've talked about. Why didn't they use the foam that they use for electrical battery fires? Well, here's probably why. Palestine, Ohio is a very rural town, very under budget. If you look at that area, look at all the condemned factories, condemned rail yards, condemned vacant steel mills, all the job infrastructures in that area is gone. It's farmland, guys. So they don't have, more than likely, those fire departments don't have that equipment because nobody in that area owns electric vehicles. It's not practical. There's no reason for it. It doesn't help farmlands, as we've seen, where the Netherlands tried to force all their farmers to go electric farm equipment, which can only be run short periods of time, and they revolted against it. And that's why I said this is an engineered problem that they've engineered to cripple our food systems. You know, The whole Biden administration, that's one of those that we're going to deal with a food shortage. It's a food shortage that they're creating. Look at California passing laws to ban all gasoline vehicles. They've created this. Then I thought it was funny. Biden during the State of the Union wanted to talk about, you know, yeah, we need green. We're still going to be dependent for at least 10 more years on coal and natural resources. Well, you know what? You know what's a natural resource? You know how much natural resources, toxic natural resources, goes in to make those electric car batteries? That is very dangerous to firefighters, first responders, very dangerous because you can't dispose of them properly. I know the landfills around here will not take a cobalt battery or a lithium battery at all because there's no proper way to dispose of it because of the chemicals. These batteries are far worse than the batteries we put in our gas cars. And our gas cars, we have a hard time disposing of them. It literally, the toxicity from them makes the landfill toxic for 60, 70 years. When we're talking electric vehicles, there's nothing green about them. They are a rolling natural disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, Musk
We
is
can't.
finding out.
We're talking about some of these vehicles. They said over 300,000. Yes, I said 300,000 chips that got to go into these vehicles to make them run, to make them work. We and then we already know about the chip shortage we have because we don't produce these chips, and these factories that they're supposed to come into Ohio. Another big thing. You know, these chips that are supposed to be going to be manufactured in Ohio, the natural resources we don't have here. We got to get them from Taiwan, China.
Well, here's the other thing. Because there's been so many Teslas that have had significant issues. Now there is no um, car recycling center will take a Tesla either.
No, you can't.
So now Musk has to try and come up with a plan for all those junk Teslas that have either been in accidents or fires. They have to try and come up with a plan for that now too.
Well, yeah, but it's just not Musk. It's GM, Ford. Our big three. They're going to have to do the same problem because nobody's going to take their vehicles either because they can't dispose of them.
Nope.
And half the shit's not even made of metal anyway anymore, so it's worthless. It can't be recycled. At least our steel and stuff could be recycled. You can't recycle carbon fiber and fiberglass. In fact, it's very toxic if you try to burn it off.
Yep.
So
But it
I don't. We're getting off point anyway.
yeah.
Because like I said, the main focus and issue is the impact it's having to our farmers. Like I said, most people don't even know anything about Palestine, Ohio. They don't know what that region area is like. That region is rural farmland. Ohio's huge has the hugest population of Amish in that area.
Well, the one thing that I
That's
keep
where
hearing.
that's Amish country for Ohio. For this part of Ohio, we got to go to Indiana towards out past Angola, like you're heading to fucking Gary to get to Amish country.
The one thing
Shipshewana, that area is Amish country in Indiana.
what I keep hearing over and over again in almost every um newspaper or um, even directly from official sources, and even um, the local um, fire departments that are directly in the impact zone. Almost every um, local official in that area, every time they're asked, they're continually telling people, go to a doctor, go get checked out,
Oh
get
yeah.
it on record, get this
Well,
all
no,
documented.
that only came from the fire chief of Palestine.
No, it's also came now from area adjoining um, elected officials now too.
Yeah, well, no, I haven't heard no elected officials, and I'm from Ohio.
It's
Mike
coming
DeWine
out of
definitely hasn't said shit about that.
this is now coming out of immediately adjoining uh, states within 30 miles of the impact zone as well.
The only official report that I've seen, and I live in Ohio, was from that fire chief in Ohio, in Palestine. He's the one
The-
that told them.
and
And
now it has spread out to
yeah, well,
um,
like I said,
West
I got to
Virginia.
see that because I haven't seen that.
It's now spreading out to um, the northern corner of West Virginia, and a little bit farther to the east as well.
Yeah,
This
so
is spreading.
I'm not going to comment, say anything on that. Take that for fact because I have not seen the reports. The only other report I seen had to deal with water, and that was from Cincinnati, which is, I mean, that's like 2 hour, 2 hour, almost 3 hour drive from where this happened.
Yeah,
I mean,
and that
we're
will.
talking about this happened all the way in the north. I live on the northwestern corner of Ohio. This happened all the way in the northeastern part of Ohio. We're talking about a state that's almost on our southern border.
Right, and
You
there
know, city, Cincinnati. They were the other ones that I heard them talking about it. But as far as that goes, I'm not. Nope. The only concrete fact I have
was
from
the
Ohio
first
that's
was
was the first responders and the fire chief of Palestine stated that for everybody to get a check and anybody that lives there
and
to
this
get a
is
check.
yeah,
You know, we
and
don't
this
have
is
FEMA, we don't have Red Cross, we don't have nobody out there right now.
and that does bring up a valid question, and I've had questions about the Red Cross in many different extreme disaster zones in the past.
It's
You know,
rural Ohio. Nobody cares about rural Ohio. Nobody's going to donate huge amounts of money for a natural disaster in a rural town. This ain't Texas. It ain't a natural hurricane that affected big cities. That's the only time we see the Red Cross or some huge catastrophe that happens in a foreign country. That's the only time we see the Red Cross get involved because that's when they can generate all this money that who knows where it goes because it definitely don't go to the people.
right?
I
But
mean,
it's
I mean the
well,
railroad companies. Oh, here's $1,000 to help
we
with your
know
displacement,
we
but we
know
need
that
you to sign this paper.
FEMA that should be known. FEMA is never going to show up because FEMA doesn't have any money. Um, but it's very strange that we haven't seen or heard um, anybody show up there.
You're not
Um,
going to. You want to know why?
oh, they're going to keep a lid on this.
Well, here's the other reason. They don't want people out there because we're talking about some huge military bases that are out there that most people don't know are there. Like that one in Southington and Ravenna. I think it's Ravenna. No, I can't remember the name of it. This thing is huge. I mean, it literally goes from Southington to Ravenna, which I mean, it's got that I know of 3 railways that go into the fucking complex. It's got its own fucking private. military fucking air base that can land the biggest our biggest military planes, and they frequently fly out of there being loaded and cargoed. And well, let's not mention some of the people that live there that aren't military,
Yep.
which you only know if you've been there, if you've lived in there, you know people from Southington, you know there's just some families that are there that aren't part of the military. It's, it's weird, but that's the areas we're talking about. And a lot of those railways also transport military stuff.
Yep.
So, they're going to keep people out of there. Just like those those videos of these whatever environmental agencies out there checking this stuff, collecting the dead fish. I don't recognize those. It's not part of our national park services, which there's that. Like I said, stated at the beginning, that's something people aren't talking about because that area there's huge. It's a tourist spot for that.
Recording is on.
It's huge, but we're dealing with something in a rural area, and that's a part. I mean, the impact that this is going to have on our food chain
Oh,
is
it's catastrophic.
tremendous. I mean, these farmlands that are out there, it's going to be devastating. It's going to be devastating to the Amish.
Oh yeah.
I mean, in that area, I know of a lot of huge dairy cattle farms. I mean, the impact. That's what they're not talking about. That's what they're trying to keep quiet. But that's my point. There's been such an attack attack on our agricultural production system here in the United States. It can no longer be neglected. That's why they're not talking about it. Because when we start pointing these things out, we start connecting the dots. We start connecting these grain mill fires, these
Keep
all
talking.
the eggs chickens dying off, the farmlands that haven't been able to, put their food out, grow their crops because of one natural disaster after the other. When it comes to the weather we've been having, or because of the lack of being able to have fertilizer come this year. Like I said, we weren't going to see it so much last year. We're going to see it this year. And the whole time they want to, our government wants to focus on Ukraine. Just think how that billions, $100 billion we sent to Ukraine. Just think how much it could have helped the infrastructure, or helped clean up the mess that they got in Palestine. But they still want to send more money to Ukraine. We're getting distracted on all these things. Then we want to talk about, well, put blame here and there. Yeah, well, the blame actually goes. There's only one group of people to blame, and that's our government, state and federal, for not fixing our infrastructures. Not, they could create a huge job industry just by building new train cars, new engines, replacing all of our old rail line and upgrading them. Hundreds of thousands of people would have jobs. But no, they don't want to because it doesn't fit their agenda of green. But yet it would, because you pointed it out. To this day, our if it wasn't for our rail system, we'd be crippled. Especially with the price of the diesel. I pointed it out and talked about it sometime last year about how many more rail cars I've seen carrying Lowe's, Walmart, because the price of diesel went so high, they went back to the old, tried and true systems of rail freight. FedEx, UPS, using rail freight again.
Yeah.
But we have no money going back into the infrastructure to build it back up. It's decaying. And it takes a lot of work to keep the rail systems up. I mean, I remember growing up, you always had had an engineer out there checking the tracks, checking the light systems, the crossover systems, making sure everything worked. Now, you might see one every 3 months out on the tracks checking them.
Shit, I remember back when they used to have the caboose.
Right.
And I actually seen one, um, and it was a 1985. It was sitting on dead track last Wednesday, and I asked one of the because I was in the restaurant,
They're
and
museum pieces anymore.
and that's exactly where this was headed. This was heading down to Chicago to because it was in such good condition that it was going to need very little uh refurbishment. That's exactly what they were going to do. They were going to give it the paint a little bit of touch up, and um give the axles a good greasing and whatnot so that it could withstand the test of time sitting um in a museum. But it was one of the last new cabooses that was made, and that's where it was going. Was it had only been out on the track just a few times, and then it sat in a uh, covered building, um, where that it wouldn't be getting all broke up or anything like that. And I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me? You're gonna mothball this and put it in a museum?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's in such pristine condition. Why not?"
I mean, but
And,
in this day and age, there was no use for a caboose, though. I mean, there really wasn't ever. I mean, it was just a signal card. So, yeah, basically, a signal card to everyone that's the end of the fucking train.
yep. And to some extent, extra emergency braking.
Yep. Which nowadays they usually put an engine towards the back for that extra emergency braking.
Yep.
Most rail systems they run if they're running heavy line of cars, you'll see 2 to 3 in the front, then you'll see 1 or 2 towards the back.
Yep.
But I mean, we're still talking about an outdated system. I mean, these like I
Yep.
said, I mean, there's no new
Diesel
cars,
electric. Yeah.
and most of the major rail yards, they're ancient too. There's been no updating to them. Very little. And now I wish B Rich would actually come on and talk, would actually go live and talk about this because he used to be an engineer,
Yeah.
railroad engineer, conductor. I did a little work back growing up as a job working on the railroad, but it was just surveying tracks and laying tracks, which is fucking hard ass job, honestly. I mean, it's a little bit
Yeah.
easier now, but it's a hard ass job, especially even surveying them. It
Yeah.
was a fun
In the
job as a
winter,
teenager growing up, but
in the winter, um, you get cold at the start of the winter, and you never really warm up.
the impact of this is far worse than what people are talking about. They haven't grasped the concept of, this happened in rural America. This happened in the heart of farmland, farm country,
And
which is why, technically, and this is where these types of accidents really do happen. These just don't happen in the cities because they're prohibited from going through big, major populated areas with chemicals. So they're put on the more of the service track type stuff, the rural tracks that go through the country where likely of, if anything, it goes through a small town. So it minimizes if something would happen. And that's, standard policy. But the impact when something like this happens to the farmland is huge because, I mean, that area, I mean, it was the worst place it could happen. As you know, they're talking
And
about the
that's the
Ohio
way it
River,
always
but they're not.
goes.
No, let me finish. They're talking about the Ohio River, but they're not talking about all the tributaries. This is how dangerous this is because you have the Cuyahoga River, you have potential of it getting into Lake Erie, and all this. I mean, it's just huge. But when it, then you have the cloud. When that comes back down as rain, now it's reaching a broader area. I mean, we can't even predict what's going to happen because we don't know what these chemicals are going to do to the agriculture system. We know it's already been stated it's killed off wildlife, it's killed off chickens. There's reports of deer, cows. I mean, the last thing we can take is another increase in our food prices because of this. This is why they're not talking about it because they kind of want it to happen. I mean, it's been proven because they refuse to fix our infrastructure. Money's great for them, especially anybody that's got these politicians that invest in all these subsidiaries that are tied and linked to BlackRock and various nefarious organizations. They're making millions off this. Just like nobody prospers. The only people that prospers during war are the rich corporations because they sell to both sides. They make their money. War is profitable for them because they'll sell their commodities to both sides. Ford did it during World War II. They've done it during the Iraq. I mean, shit, we've seen Toyotas, Fords, Dodges that the Iraqis were driving. They make their money off this stuff. A natural disaster for them is the potential to rake in millions and billions of dollars. Because now, all that farmland Bill Gates bought up, well, that's going to be prime farmland for him to dictate prices at the agriculture markets. He can control the markets now. Or he can crush the markets by not planting his fields and get kickbacks from the government for not planting them. Most people forgot about that one. Yeah, you can actually, like us, technically, that field out there, that's farm field. That used to be clover field. Before that, it was barley. Mr. Roller, when he owned it, what he would do, he would stop planting it for 5 years, get paid for the government for not planting it. Then he'd start planting that one, shut another part of his field down, get paid for the government by that for not planting it for 5 years. Which they talked about gave good reasons why. But now look at the time we live in now. We still have those policies in place to where, okay, it happened, especially when COVID happened. Farmers were getting paid not to plant. Documented fact. Most farmers didn't buy into it, but a bunch did because as a farmer, your livelihood depends on your crop for that year. You put yourself in debt just to plant that fucking crop for that year. And if you don't have a bountiful harvest yield, you might not be able to pay the bank. The farmer's life is the hardest life any people live because it's not a money maker. Some years you might make money, but you're always borrowing to be able to plant for the next season. Or if you had a bad season. And when we start having these impacts, whether it be nature with the weather or industrial impacts, it hurts the farmers, and we end up losing more farmers. Some of that farmland might not be able to be farmed for 30, 40 years because of the chemicals that got reintroduced into it.
Reminds me of the atrazine. only much worse.
There's not enough focus on that because I mean, look at DuPont. DuPont was probably the most heavily fined and persecuted company because of all the chemicals they dumped into our rivers. They don't care because the fine is cheaper to pay off the fine and continue dumping than it is anything else because that's just it. It's just a fine. There's no real repercussion or punishment. Instead of, you want to fix that problem, okay, you're going to do this, you're done. We're not allowing you, we're shutting you down completely until you make the changes to stop. That's how you put an end to some of this crap. How do you punish the rail line? Well, you punish them for not obeying the laws that are there. Going too fast. You punish the company who that hot box didn't notify the conductor and it was faulty. You punished them. You make them stop. So they check every single hot box and make sure it's working until they update the system. But they can't because they don't have the money to do it because the government does not put back into the infrastructure. Great speeches by every president since I can remember talk about we need to improve our infrastructure. But Congress never does it. It's all words to make it sound good. I mean, Trump did a little bit, but then you have states like Ohio will take that money and so we're going to lay stone instead of laying good asphalt, or we're going to lay the cheap asphalt that's got to be replaced every year instead of putting the good asphalt down that lasts for 7 to 10 years before we got to tear it up and redo it. The states are raking on in all this extra money, illegally shifting the money around through shady, the lowest bidder gets the contract. You grease my palm, I'll grease yours. We're going to give you this contract for this much. You're going to give me this back. Happens all the time. Anybody's been
Yep.
in the anybody's ever been in the construction field, you know what I'm talking about. It's probably happened to you if you've been a contractor a few times, where some company gets the job that you are more qualified to, and you might have even had the lowest bid, but you got taken out by somebody with a higher bid, which then it really makes no sense. But it happens all the time.
Even in
It,
the security industry, that happens.
well, that happens a lot in the security industry. It
Yeah.
happens anywhere where you got that type of system in place. I mean, now, you know what the biggest, this is kind of getting off topic, but not, you know what the biggest gimmick out there now is for contractors? It ain't building, it's taking these contracting jobs to strip the buildings, the old buildings down, because they don't want none of these old buildings up. So they're going in, stripping them down instead of buying them at cheap and re-renovating them, selling them, making money, which used to be the gig during the 90s. Huge money was made in that investment field. I was part of that investment field, making good money, buying up these low-end houses that were condemned, fixing them up, and reselling them on the market, and basically quadrupling your money. Because you could get these places, to this day, you can get these places for $5 to $6 grand, and you're going to dump, probably another 6 to 10 grand into it, but you're going to quadruple your money. You're going to take that $6,000 to $10,000 investment and turn it into anywhere between 80 to 1,000. Well, now we can't do that anymore. Now your investment is demolishing the house, stripping it, gutting it, recycling everything, which is what they make you do. You can't keep it, and all that stuff's lost. But you make your money off the recycling fee. You're not making as much as you could fix it up and turn it back over like you used to. Because no, we don't want you to do that. They set it up, fixed it, so you could never do it because you can't get your license to fucking rebuild because they set the code standard so high to where you can't affordably do it anymore because they want these houses gone. They want these cheap stuff in that don't last 2 to 3 years before you got to replace a roof or your wall starts sagging because it's just shoddy builds, but it's something that's cheap. They don't want stuff that lasts forever. They want you in these electric cars that's not going to last. It's going to have major electrical issues down the road to where you can't fix it. It's cheaper to get a new one than it is to actually fix it. To where old school cars just slap another engine in it, go to the junkyard, get a junkyard engine. Your tranny goes out, go to the junkyard, get a tranny from the junkyard, replace the torque converter, and you're good to go for several thousand more miles, 100,000 more miles. No, now brain goes out on the vehicle. You're talking $3 to $6 grand just to replace your brain, computer brain, a little box in your vehicle. Well, for $6 grand, I can go get another vehicle off the lot. Or I can go to a junkyard, maybe find one at.
Yeah, and then there's no guarantee that that's going to actually work.
But yeah, well, now with all these chips and stuff, you can't just do that. You literally got to take it to a mechanic, certified. We're getting away from being able to fix our own stuff. Look at all the rules and regulations they put on people that live in the city. You can't collect rainwater. You can't have chickens. You can't grow gardens in your own because you live in the city.
Yeah, I want to touch on that since you went there. I have a small catchment system on my house. I've had it on for about a year, maybe. And I got a $350 tax on my water bill.
Well, it goes back to the big joke because it was a joke. It was just a study, but they tried to portray it as it wasn't a joke. And look, trending things aren't always. They become distractions, and it was a distraction for many because many people go, "Oh my God, they're going to get rid of fucking gas stoves, propane stoves." But there is some truth to that. The newer houses, they're trying to get most of your newer houses you buy now have no gas in them. It's all electric. They are trying to eliminate natural gas. Like
my other house was built in 2013. That house is well, when I bought it, it was all electric, electric range, everything. I've taken the electric stove out and I put gas stove, gas hot water heater with the electric as a backup system, as a redundancy. But I also have solar and that as well. But yeah, I mean, this is a matter of fact. This is absolutely happening, and this isn't we're not talking about a house that was built in suburbia. We're talking about a house that is built 12 miles from nowhere, Iowa, and this was built to county code in the poorest county in Iowa. That they were mandated to build this house to that code.
Yep.
And I'm like, even the floor has heated tiles in it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'll admit when it's like 40 below and you put your feet on the floor and you ain't got to worry about The floors being ice cold, it's kind of nice, but
Yeah, it's all nice until you got to pay the electric bill.
um, because that place is on solar, it isn't that bad. But there's still that um I still have a small uh light bill. It's under $90 because there's geotherm, there's solar, and then I still have that little bit.
Well, the other thing
But
is cheap electric bill because you don't live there all the time.
I spent up until about 45 days ago, I was spending um anywhere from 10 to 12 days out of the month there. And during the winter, I don't, because the house does sit on a hill, I can't completely power down the house. So I do have to keep the temperature um, above 60 degrees in there. So yeah, it is a little costly. Um,
Well, it's huge. It's huge cost. I mean, okay, you did bring up a great point because, and I can actually relate to this point. The trailer park I was living at. I mean, these trailers are fucking. Most some of them were fucking made back in the 70s. They ain't new trailers. But what they did, and because of the coding, none of these trailers have propane. They're all electric. Everything in the trailers are electric because of the codes and the kickbacks the people get. So the guy that actually owns the trailer park, not the guy that I was paying rent to, because he was just basically the landlord, the tenant that overseed the place. But the guy that actually owned the trailer park, he's making extra money for putting all electric in. It's cheaper, getting kickbacks on the insurance, cheaper insurance,
yep.
getting government fucking extra kickback because it's green.
Oh,
And you know what? Last year, shit you not. I mean, I was warned about. During the winter, you do have high electric rates. He was saying $500, $600 electric bills. Some people were having. I had almost $1,000 electric bill last year, on 1 month,
it's
and that was because I was staying there all the time. I was driving back and forth doing basically a 4-hour commute every day, 2 hours there, 2 hours back. So I was there. Tell you what, when I changed that around, my summer bills last year, 50, $70 because I was only there on the weekends. Everything was shut off during the week until I got home. Now when it started getting cold around October, November, I'm still doing the same thing. Yeah, Friday I'd get home. There was times where, well, I think the lowest temperature in the house trailer it was like 43 degrees. So I had to kick the heat on, set up my electrical heat, and all the way through till December. And there was some times where I had to run the furnace too, which sucked because that thing, like I said, almost $1,000, 800, 600. That was my lowest electric bill, was 600 for last winter. And my electric bill wasn't breaking $90, but I wasn't there. Now, when I was there for the 4 weeks that I was there, from December into the first week of January, I moved out. My January electric bill was $290 some dollars. No, $243 for basically 3 weeks of electricity.
it it really wasn't.
So there is a point to made. If you're actually there all the time, and using it, it's going to be a higher electrical rate. And the electric companies are making huge kickbacks. But what I found out, part of this clause and the gimmick of this whole system came with the electric company, Michigan and Indiana Power's got this scam going on, where it sounds great if you've got everything electric, At the end of the year, you'll get credited for usage. Well, since I had low electric the whole year, I basically November and December I had no electric bill because I had that much in credit to cover my electric bill. And actually, I still had a little bit left over because the actual bill was actually around, should have been around almost $400. So I had another $200 credited off my January bill for 3 weeks. So I paid nothing in November and December. But you know what? If I had propane,
Oh,
I would have probably only been gassed up for the whole year 3 times, if that. Like this house here runs off propane. My dad, and he's got it set fixed. It's one of those gimmicks. It's a scam. It's a gimmick. You buy it. You send in a contract for fixed price. So if prices go up, you're still only going to pay that certain amount, the amount you agreed upon. But if you have like this year, we've had a warm winter, so actually he's going to be paying more for his gas than what he would if it was a cold winter. It's a 50-50 shot. You're gambling. But
you
it
brought up
sounds
a very
great. It does sound great until you realize it's a trick.
you bring up a
Because
very good.
now I'm paying more for gas to get filled up, which during the winter we're probably only going to get filled up 2 to 3 times for the whole winter. So this year, we're losing money. We're actually paying more than what we would if we had a harsh, cold winter. My dad, he does things to regulate it. He runs propane heaters downstairs. This new metal roof actually helped out a lot. I don't have, I barely have to run a heater upstairs anymore in the winter because it actually stays warm. Where before, if you didn't have a heater running constantly up here, you would freeze to death because it's old. This house is over 200 years old, and that metal roof. I was against it for so long. Actually helped. It keeps it cooler during the summer, less stress. But this year alone, because of the few times we had, that flash freeze incident where everybody got froze out, everything froze up. Well, water heater went out, pipe burst, water softener went out. Well, just a couple of weeks ago, our furnace went out. Money they don't have. They actually literally to be able to pay. And my dad even said it. I didn't even catch up on any of the bills. That went to replacing the heater, the soft water. Then, thankfully, because they wouldn't have done it, they wouldn't have had no extra money to pay for the furnace. They cashed my mom's 401k out, all the way out, because that's the only way they could afford to fix those things. They didn't have, because most places now, oh no, we need a check. We need your cash payment right now before we come out. It's going to cost this much for us to fix it. We need it paid for today. If you can't pay it for today, we can't do it. And we're talking about I think it was water heater was almost $3,000 to get done. Another $2,000 for the water softener, and it was almost $2,000 to replace the motor in the furnace.
Yeah, I did that one already.
No, people can't afford that. But you're being punished. Now you're being punished. If they would have switched over to electric and got rid of the propane, things would have been cheaper.
And I went actually.
Which, in fact, it wouldn't have been cheaper because now your electric bill is going to
I actually went the other way. With my townhouse, I actually went back to gas when I bought this house. Over 15 years ago, it had electric. That water heater went out not once but twice. that because I have such bad water. The third time, I was like, you know what? Screw that. I'm going. My parents had always had better luck with gas, so I was like, screw this. I'm going back to gas. They tend to just weather the storm better. Um,
They
I
do.
went
They
back
last
to
longer.
gas, and when I was redoing the the system up on the country home, I was like, you know what? I'm going to set this up because I do have um, the the LP up there, and I've actually got three tanks up there, and they're all very large tanks. And so now I've had that property now 2 years, and I've only used um I think just a shad under um 2200. uh I want to say and that's just under half of the one tank, and that's the small tank. And I'm like, maybe I should try and because when I bought the property, there are already two very large tanks on the property, and I was like, yeah, probably better set a third tank in just to be safe. And I haven't had to buy any. Um, After I put that third tank in, I topped the other two off, and I haven't had to buy any now. Um, and this is my second winter. I think I'm doing pretty good. But that heated floor, and that's got a steel roof on it too. That heated floor really makes a difference. But where it does make a huge difference, you're right about um, the having many things electrical. Um, because I have solar and geotherm both as redundancy systems. I do get a significant kickback. Where that kickback does come, it is I don't return anything back off the solar system. I keep that. Where that kickback comes, it is off the geotherm. And without that um, system in place, I would probably have a $200 or $300 light bill. You're right.
Well, here's the other thing. If you only get that kickback off that geotherm, if it's ran electric, which most people are smart enough not to do it electric, we do it through either propane or those wood burning furnaces.
Oh, that's going in. That's already on site. That goes in the spring.
Which has been, especially in the rural area, that's been another big thing because it offsets the cost of the propane, and it allows them to go actually do the geothermal stuff and not have to worry about a high electric bill or using more propane by just using the wood burners or pellet burners, those big ones you see outdoors, which has become quite common around here because it helps offsets the cost.
Well, the thing is that um, you have to
You don't get
actually
no kickback for that.
as soon as that
Actually, in
yeah.
fact, to install the geothermal part to that, you can't actually get a contractor to do it. You have to do it because a contractor will only do it if it is hooked up to your propane or electric grid.
And you have to, because I also have solar in there as well. You actually have to put um a multi-phase switchbox in there as well. Um, with because there's no way to run that wood burner um to run it in tandem with the solar. It's not, those two systems are not compatible
Well,
at
I mean,
all.
I don't talk much about solar because most people can't afford it. And one, why am I going to buy something that's not American made anyway? I'm at that
Um,
point. All your
well,
solar panels coming straight
oh,
from China.
well, it's the house actually, um, a property actually, it came with the house, um, and the only difference was that there was um 5 arrays that had not yet been finished. All the pads, all that have been done. Um, I just had to. In fact, all the work had already been paid to be done. It's just they hadn't had it done yet. Was the biggest issue. And that delayed, when I purchased it, it delayed that work by almost 6 months. But the biggest problem, once I put that wood burner in, and I try to tie that in to the geotherm, I will lose over 60% of that kickback. Um, so I'm really going to have to weigh uh, my odds here, because then I'm going to have to either I'm going to be having to buy wood, um, even though I have um, access, because I do have woods that I can cut on both properties over there. Um, but I really don't want to do that. As I mean, there are some wood that absolutely needs to go, but long term, that gets quite expensive and quite laborious to do. That's a redundancy system. Um,
No,
pretty much.
actually, you're overlooking you're probably your biggest money maker right there, and people don't realize this. Like I said, I grew up in the outdoors. I've taken all kinds of fucking classes that deal with outdoor stuff. One of the most important things for you as a property owner and you own a bunch of woodland is to thin it out.
They're the one piece of property.
Thin out your
Um,
overgrowth, and you're actually giving back to the environment by doing that.
the one piece of property.
And
Um,
well, let me finish. By doing that, here's where you're losing out on a lot of money. When you start selectively harvesting and thinning out your woodlands, which is going to generate all kinds of benefits for you, better growth, more wildlife comes back into the area. But now you're getting into something that we're having a shortage of, and anybody's been to the fucking had to go buy some lumber the last couple of years. You know what I'm talking about. Prices are outrageous. There's many ways to set up a mill. You could be milling your own lumber and making mass money.
this one
In
property.
fact, in fact, I'm going to tell you this: a truckload, if you don't have woodlands, but a truckload, semi-load of timber will cost you around $800. You can mill that and triple your money
Oh,
by
this
selling it back
wood.
to the fucking lumber yards or just selective cutting. And honestly, and it's an investment that's worth
Um,
looking for people to looking at because you can build your own mill or you can buy one, and depends where you buy them. The best one I've seen on the market is it's right around the 10K range, but you're gonna make that money back quick if you do that. For one,
in a
now what you're
weekend.
doing, nah, it's gonna take a few weekends, but what
No,
you're doing though, now it's gonna save some money because now you can upgrade your heating systems. You can start going geothermal inside your houses and garages, which a lot of people do. They tie it into their garages because they're not on relying on natural gas, such as or propane or electric their homes anymore, garages. They're relying on their just burning wood or pellets, and you're saving tons of money, and you're giving back to the land, even though you're taking from it, but you're giving it back. You're going to increase potentially your hunting in the next couple of years because you're thinning out the vegetation and these woodlands that are overgrown, preventing fires for one by thinning them out, cleaning them out, increasing the other vegetation that animals thrive on and live off of. So you're making yourself an equal friendly environment that's not only sustaining you, supporting you, and keeping you warm. You're also helping recut the cost of lumber because
It,
lumber yards are looking for lumber.
that we've done some of that undercutting in there of the smaller stuff.
It's not the smaller stuff you go after. You keep the smaller stuff. You go after the bigger, older ones.
Some of these trees in there are 300 plus years old, and they're in extremely good health. There's you get 30, 40 feet of pretty straight board foot without any real significant snarls, and it is very good high end wood, and there's a reason why that path has not been logged. Um, One, it is accessibility because it is landlocked, but two, the family that it stayed in, um, they didn't ever want to log it, and they had the same vision for it that my dad did when he bought it, that was going to be retirement. Well, I'm not done working yet. I'm just on a hiatus from work into the next chapter of my life. But that is to start doing the edges and whatnot with, I would say probably in the next 3 to 5 years, I am going to build a legitimate log home out of logs that come from that piece of property, um, and eventually sell the big home and the townhome and literally live in the middle of the woods. Um, and yeah, I've had a few offers to log that, but and thin it down dramatically. But some of the smaller stuff, we have had to go in and actually knock some of the small stuff down, not only for firewood for vets, but also to improve that undergrowth vegetation that you spoke of. Um, but also there is a point that you do have to knock some of that bigger stuff down. We just, number one, getting saws that can actually cut something that big. I mean, you're talking some trees that um, you pull a vehicle up in front of, and the base of the trees are bigger around than the front of a truck. What do you do with those?
I mean, there's ways to do it. There's actually convenient ways to do it. There's all kinds of gimmicks. I mean, that's why our logging industry, like the huge sections like Maine and that area, it's protected. It's actually, but the people that own that land for the next several generations, their kids are always going to have something to log because when they clear an area, they replant that area for the next upcoming generations, so they'll have something to log. There's ways to do it. It's just it comes to a point you do a little research and you'll find that there's a lot of things you can do that is actually what they try to tell us is not environmental friendly. Turns out to be a lie because just like the whole solar thing. You know, look at all this push for solar, all these gimmicks that they've gotten. Well, you'll get a government. They did the same thing with the windmills. You get a windmill on your property.
Yep.
They give you all these kickbacks. You'll get this much cut off. At one point, you'll be tied into it since it's on your property. We'll pay you for the electric that comes off it, and a lot of people bought into it. It was a gimmick because what did we lose? We lost a ton of woodland. We lost a ton of farmland because when these things go up, when they start putting up multiple, I've showed you pictures where I was driving through. That used to all be farmland and woodland. Now all you see, it's an eyesore. All you see is windmill after windmill for as far as the eye can see. Well, they got to
Yeah,
put
they
substations in.
tried. They tried pulling that. Um,
But
they were starting to map that out in my area, and I just
here's my
happened to
point.
be home.
Here's my point. Why did a lot of farmers give up their farmland? Well, because now they're going to get an income that's guaranteed every year, unlike growing crops where they got to go in debt to the bank every year to put out the next year's harvest if they had a bad year. So it actually becomes sensible to go ahead, just put those up. I'm gonna invest. I'm gonna wind farm instead of produce farm because it's an easier way of life. I don't have to struggle and worry about, well, what's the weather going to be like this year? How bad is it going to be? Or is it going to be too hot? How much am I going to lose? And that's the point. This Green Deal type stuff is not green. Our infrastructure needs fixed. Our electric grid cannot support all these electric cars. I mean, I live in an area, you still don't see a charging station around here. Do they expect me to have to buy because the city of Columbus has got electric chargers? So they expect us out in the rural area to switch over when our electric kids can't afford it, when our electric bills are through the roof because we're getting ass raped by a corrupt corporation that has a monopoly on the system. And we can't get a cheaper electric company because they're not allowed to compete with each other. It's a scam. So, I mean, those are the things we should be talking about, not these weather balloons or not, it's water. Yeah, it's in our water system. But look at the bigger impact. That's why they're not talking about it. That's why they don't want people to talk about it, because that's why they want to keep giving you distractions after distractions. Oh, we had a campus shooting at Michigan State University, which is an hour down the road from me. About an hour down the road from me. It's like just one distraction after another. So we're not talking about these points because we're getting about that 2 hour mark, and I'm ending this.
Yeah, I've got a call coming in.
Understand how huge this impact really is, and it's just not this incident. It's gotten people stop talking about the chicken plant fire. And price of eggs. They're not talking about, oh, we're letting all these illegal immigrants cross the fucking border, but if you try to smuggle some eggs back from Mexico, we're detaining you. We're threatening you with prosecution because you're trying to smuggle eggs across the border. But it's okay for the illegals to do it and come across. But as soon as a U.S. citizen tries to bring something back, oh no, it's not okay. Well, how about you go do your job and stop these illegals from coming across? Stop worrying about what we're bringing back. That ain't a narcotic. People are not talking about all these substations that are getting shot up. We have some major issues happening that is far more concerning than any of these stupid green deals that doesn't benefit us at all. In fact, it's actually hindering us and hurting us in the long run. We need to get
Agreed.
back to basics, basic common sense. Common sense is our infrastructures need fixed, our roadways need fixed, our railways need fixed and updated and completely redone. We need new cars, new engines that can survive. We need real steel, American steel, being put in on them to be built. We need American parts being put on them that's going to last, not these cheap Chinese knockoff parts that you replace every other month, or the new Chinese, Taiwanese tools that snap the first time you go to use them because it's inferior products. We need to get back to the basics. But it goes back to what we said. You got to stop re-electing these idiots back into power in these offices that don't support these ideas. I'm tired of the wishy-washy corruption. As soon as somebody gets in there, they just, they only tell you what you want to hear when it's time for your vote. Otherwise, it's the same status quo. We're just going to give you distraction after distraction and make millions when they can't. Their salary doesn't even compute to what they're making. How are they becoming millionaires and billionaires while in Congress when their salary don't cover it? It's impossible. AOC should still be living just a little bit better lifestyle than what she was when she bitched about she couldn't afford to live in DC. Now she's a multi-millionaire. Shouldn't never happened. And a lot of that money that's going into their pockets could be going back into our infrastructure. And as far as the Pentagon and stuff, well, guess what? Part of the branch of the military is also responsible for helping to fix our infrastructure. They have a whole branch dedicated to it.
Yep.
In a time of natural crisis and disasters, and our infrastructures are part of a crisis and natural disaster, which is another reason why it's helping them to keep things quiet in Palestine, Ohio, because of all the military bases, huge major military bases that are in that area that most people don't know about. They can use that because they did call on the military to help them out with the cleanup and disposal. And next thing you know, everything's being hushed, quiet. It actually makes me wonder: does some of those chemicals on board those rail cars, do they actually come from the Ravenna rail line that goes to the fucking military base?
Well, they did say that one of the chemicals was leftover byproduct from World War I.
Which more than likely it came out of that military base then in Southington, because that thing's been around forever and it's huge. But time's about up, so I hope you guys enjoyed.
Yep. Y'all have a good one. We'll catch you. I'm still working on a video, so that'll be up when I can get it up.
Yeah, there's probably might be one or two more videos, and it's gonna be it for a little bit till I get resituated after my move.
Alrighty. We'll catch you in the green room.